CURES is sponsored by Wheeler Health's Better Choice program. More at wheelerhealth.org.
Helping you lead a healthier life. This is CURES.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the CURES Show, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness from credible sources. I'm Kara Sundlin. So what if the key to calming our anxiety could really be your diet? Well, in the book, Calm Your Mind with Food, you can find cutting edge research about the real ways that anxiety is rooted in the brain, the gut, our immune system, and even our metabolism. The groundbreaking guide is written by board-certified Harvard nutritional psychiatrist, professional chef, and nutritional biologist, Dr. Naidoo. She's joining us now to talk about more. You are the triple threat in the world of food and medicine. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Kat. Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well. And I think that so many are struggling with anxiety, whether it be women in midlife trying to figure out if this is perimenopause or menopause, or our young people have a mental health crisis. And what often isn't getting talked about is food. But you say that is a huge missing link.
It's a missing link that everyone is overlooking because it's something, we eat meals, we eat several times a day, and it's part of our life. Yet we sort of overlook it as one of the tools in our toolkit. I think that many people go towards medications or therapy, both of which are valuable in the right settings. But food is something that is very powerful, especially for conditions like anxiety.
Yeah, so let's talk about why. Essentially, we now know that our gut is like a second brain. There's a highway going up and down, and our gut is creating all of those neurotransmitters we need to feel good.
It is. And the production of the neurotransmitters and everything else that goes on in the gut with the trillions of microbes that live there is also related to the food we eat. So think about the fact that you might have a headache and maybe here, maybe somewhere in your head. You don't take a pill and crush it and rub it on your head. You swallow a pill with some water and you hope the headache goes away in maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes. In a similar way, the food that we eat is going through our digestive tract, so the gut microbiome interacting with trillions of microbes, and then over time will have an impact on our brain. So food is a very powerful tool that can either help or hinder us. And often it's about the foods you can add into your diet than being restrictive or taking anything away.
Okay, so I definitely want to talk about what we can add in, but let's just talk about some of the simple things that maybe we shouldn't be eating so much of that could be exacerbating anxiety. And you kind of discovered this on your own journey, as a Harvard psychiatrist, starting to realize some of the things you were doing every day were exacerbating your anxiety, which came from fighting cancer.
It did. And, part of it was what was I adding to my coffee? Certainly it wasn't sugar, but it was, getting it at a coffee shop and not realizing that the creamer was ultra processed, and cleaning up some of those habits and understanding what to do really made a difference in my life. Going back to a homemade golden chai that my grandmother taught me with fresh herbs and spices that were very healing was very important. And I think understanding that you can walk yourself back from that level of anxiety. Breath work is another important thing. Exercise, extremely helpful. So it's a lot of lifestyle factors, but really the central pillar is what we're eating. And adding in herbs, spices, and lots of other foods that we can talk about can be very, very helpful as well. And the things that we know we shouldn't be eating a ton of, we know sugar is not our friend. The occasional slice. No one is saying don't eat a piece of cake on your birthday, but by all means, we shouldn't be eating ultra processed foods all the time, or lots of candy and cake just as a matter of lifestyle. There are much healthier ways to get those kind of sweets. And, extra dark natural chocolate is actually good for your brain. There's a good choice with a piece of fruit like a clementine is actually very helpful for your brain and other mechanisms in your body.
Yeah, so we really need to start thinking about brain health, connecting it to what we're eating. Let's just start with ultra-processed foods, because I feel like that might be easy for folks, rather than having a commercial creamer that has a bunch of ingredients that you can't pronounce. You could make a small shift that could be healthier for your brain and maybe help with your anxiety as well.
A simple thing that I've done instead of an ultra processed creamer, and I'll speak about other ultra processed foods in a second, is you can actually make homemade hemp milk from hemp seeds. I mean, it's quick to blend it up, and it has a really creamy texture. Plus, it's rich in short chain omega 3s called ALA, which are actually great for your brain and your overall health. So that's an easy switch that I made. It was kind of early on in all of this process, but also the fact that you mentioned not being able to pronounce or recognize ingredients. That's a really big telltale sign. Because if you're looking at an ingredient label, and it's usually an ultra processed food, if it's cauliflower, it should say cauliflower. But ultra processed foods have so many other things, colorants, dyes, food stabilizers, preservatives. These are not healthy for us over time. So they disrupt the gut. They do not feed and nurture the gut microbes. They ultimately cause a process of inflammation in the gut, which really is when I start to see people have an increase in their symptoms in conditions like anxiety.
Okay, so let's just run down some of the most common ultra processed food in case people are not familiar. Like, oh, am I having this on a regular basis? I mean, unfortunately,
Right.
so much of what's in the grocery store is ultra processed now.
That's right. So it's the chips, the crackers, the cookies, the foods that have been. It's almost like there's very little real component of the actual food in it, and it's made with added ingredients. Like I said, if it's broccoli, it should say broccoli. So try to stay away from those packaged, processed, ultra processed foods because they are not the healthiest for us. Now, in the world that we live in, it's very hard to avoid a processed food, but try to stay away from the ones that have, extreme levels of processing. For example, here's an example of a food that's actually optional and healthy although it's processed: chickpeas. So chickpeas and canned, say, black beans. These are great sources of plant-based proteins. They have good fiber in them, and not everyone has a chance to soak the beans and pressure cook the beans. So a can of chickpeas, or say black beans, you can rinse it out of the liquid it comes in and eat it. And that's an example of a processed food that is quite acceptable to add into your diet. It's the versions of, say, a cauliflower pizza or a broccoli nugget that has very little actual broccoli in it, but is processed with a lot of other ingredients, which may not be healthy, or things like chicken fingers, chicken nuggets that are very, very highly processed.
I mean, let me ask you this. A lot of us moms are living on mac and cheese and nuggets for our kids because they want it and it's easy. If you're getting the
Yeah.
organic kind, is it like you're getting a better brand that says no artificial?
Right.
Is that a little bit better?
It is definitely a little bit better. So all of these foods are on a spectrum, and certainly we want to be able to have these convenient options to feed children. Um, the ones that are on fast food restaurants, Kara, are not
Yeah.
healthy. But if you have found a version that tastes good and doesn't have a ton of preservatives and has organic ingredients and maybe some whole grain in it, these are good options as a step to help moms, helps families, help parents with feeding their kids. So one of the things I like to say is, all you could also add in things like other ways you can add in vegetables to their diet, and you maybe disguise it in a different way, add fruit to their palate so that they are eating a lot of whole foods along with everything else that's in their diet.
And just so people can really understand this, I mean, not that you're not going to sometimes, I really try to avoid drive-throughs like the plague, but once in a while you're going to go through and
Once in a while.
it's probably going to be, so it's amount. But when people say, well, how is it really affecting me? I love your analogy about how
Right.
Advil, you take that and a little while later, you feel better. The
Right.
reverse, you eat this highly
Right.
processed food, much of it that's not even
Right.
allowed or legal to sell in other parts of the world that we're allowed here
And
in
other parts of the
America.
world. Yeah.
And so we eat it
True.
and it causes inflammation. And inflammation is really what affects everything from anxiety to depression to Alzheimer's disease, right?
That's right. That's right. It is absolutely right. So more and more in mental health, we're realizing that the underlying process of inflammation, especially inflammation in the gut, that develops over time. So one of the things to point out, Kara, is that if you fall and scrape your knee, you have an injury, the body's process of healing is acute inflammation, which is really important. But we are talking about chronic insidious inflammation. One of the ways that gets set up in our body, especially our gut, is by eating these highly processed, ultra processed foods all the time. And so, yes, running through an airport the day that we just don't have a chance to repair something, you know, we might all go through a drive through at some point, but it shouldn't be the default way of how we live every
Hmm.
day, because those foods are basically going to set up your gut for inflammation, not take care of the microbes that are there to help you, and they perform multiple functions. And when those microbes are inflamed and the process really disrupts our gut, you start to develop conditions like leaky gut, which you may have heard about, because there's damage to the lining of the gut. There starts to be leakage and problems with inflammation, not just in the gut. It starts to reach places like the brain. And neuroinflammation is very significant because it not only drives symptoms, it is now being seen as a problem in many different conditions: depression, anxiety, cognitive disorders, how we think as well. And it's becoming better understood, better researched, and something we should be aware of.
Well, and I'm happy to hear that it's better research. I shared this story with you in our prep call that
Mm.
I remember going to a dermatologist when I was a teenager, going off to college, trying to figure out what I was going to do about some acne that I wanted to get rid of. And, you know, I'm like, should I change my diet? And remember her looking at me and saying, nothing you eat has anything to do with your acne, which we now know that's totally false. And I still couldn't
Right.
pinpoint exactly what it was, although I was a teenager and I'm sure I was eating a lot
Right.
of fast foods and pizzas and sodas and bad things like that. It didn't affect
Right.
me gaining weight because you're young, but it
Right.
probably was
Right.
affecting my
Right.
skin and my hormones and maybe other things as well. So we now,
That's
it's
right.
shifting. But I don't know if people go to the doctor if immediately the regular docs are really drawing that much parallel to food. Would you agree that more needs to be done to educate us?
Much more needs to be done, Kara. Even recently, statistics show that only 20% of our US medical schools teach doctors enough about nutrition. So I'm sorry to say that even if you go to one of my colleagues, they're not really trained to talk to you about nutrition or food choices. It's not something that we taught and trained. If you want to learn, you have to go outside of medical school to do it. So one of the suggestions I have, and something that we're working on, is actually developing more training to help clinicians learn more about nutrition, because there simply is not enough out there. And there are two states now that have mandated training for their providers in nutrition, and I'm
Mm.
really excited to hear that, and I want that to become more national so that more doctors, more providers, whatever your medical training is, can learn nutrition. And what we're talking about is the basics. That's something we even get in medical school. Some basics so that you can counsel your patients. It's got to be a conversation that's more than, cut back on your salt for hypertension. So I agree. Doctors are not taught this. They're not talking about it, and we need to do better in our education system, and helping all providers actually know more so that they can help more patients.
Do you recall which two states are now moving forward with
I
that?
want to say I want to say
Oh,
Texas, and maybe it's Louisiana.
wow.
This is quite recent.
Interesting.
Texas is one of them. Yeah.
I mean, I know
I
it's
want to say
very,
it's Texas.
I stay away from politics on this show, but you can't move away from the new Health and Human Services Director, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., wherever you
Mhm.
feel about some of his
Right.
measures. It seems
Right.
universally, most moms I talk to are fine with taking the chemicals out of the food because it's like another job to
Yes.
figure out what is okay to feed our kids. And we know that these big companies have the recipes for Europe without all that because they can't sell them there.
That's correct. That's right. They cannot solve it there. And in a lot of countries in Europe and other countries of the world, many of those ingredients are not permitted. So one of the things I feel quite supportive of, if someone is able to have better conversations with the food industry and start to mandate removing those unhealthy ingredients, that is going to serve not just our physical health, but also our mental well-being.
Yes.
So that I know has taken some doing.
So, in fact, that was just in the news. I'll just share it that a lot of the, within the next year, a lot of the favorite Halloween candies of Skittles and the Mars Company, they're saying they're going to take out artificial coloring. So, a lot of them, I think, are moving in that direction now that we're raising awareness, which, with your book,
Right.
this is raising awareness. And I want to talk about calm your mind with food. And what
Yes.
you're going to learn is how this all works. And it's not complicated, right? So we could start small with adding in some great foods that are not expensive that could really make a difference for your mental health.
Yes, you can. And I just want to confirm that it's Texas and Louisiana
Thank
where
you.
these new laws have emerged. So yes, I'd like to tell people about an acronym. There's a longer one in the book, but when you're in the supermarket and you're trying to think to yourself, what are the things I can fill my grocery cart with? Think of CALM, CALMS. So I want you to think of citrus from lemons, limes, but also the vitamin C from clementines, oranges, are good for us and good for our brain, and they help anxiety.
Wait,
Another one is extra dark natural chocolate, which I know everyone loves, but it's not the candy bars, right? It's actually extra dark natural chocolate.
like
And the
above
other C is for
70%?
choline.
I'm
I'm sorry,
sorry.
yeah, like 70, yeah, exactly, about 70, 75% or darker
Yep.
is good. And it's usually the ones that you see in supermarkets that are chunks of chocolate, not really in a bar. And actually, there's some newer brands now that are making some healthy, extra dark natural chocolates, and these are good. Also, choline, which is found in eggs, but it's also found on legumes if you don't consume eggs. So these are good things to stock up your home and pantry with. The A is for both ashwagandha and as well as antioxidants. So we often talk about the colors of the rainbow, the colors of food. These are important because of the anti-inflammatory properties and the antioxidants in these vegetables and berries and fruit have. The other A is for ashwagandha, which has always been a very ancient Ayurvedic herb, but very bitter tasting. So a supplement is a good idea there. There are sites like consumerlabs.com where you can look up a supplement before you take it and make sure your doctor knows because they know the other medications that you're taking. Um, then there's L, which is liquids. So tea, just calming teas, things like lavender, passion flower, green tea, as well as hydration, just drinking water, carrying a sustainable water bottle, filling it up during the day, and making sure that you're sipping on water is important because when you're dehydrated, you can actually be much more anxious.
Mm.
I also like to say to people when you get up in the morning, drink a glass of water because your body really has been dehydrated overnight as you've been sleeping. Drink a glass of water because a lot of people wake up with morning anxiety. So it's just something that may not take away all of it, but it certainly helps. The M is for more magnesium. Americans tend to somehow be a little short on magnesium. And I list foods where you can eat your magnesium. But if you're low, your doctor will need to do a blood test to check that and figure out a way to supplement it. But also more omega-3s, things like fatty fish like salmon or sardines or anchovies are rich in omega-3 fats, and plant-based sources are hemp seeds or flax seeds or walnuts. And S is simple. It's actually spices and herbs because these not only flavor up our food with almost no calories, the pure spice has almost zero calories, but it flavors up our food. It makes it more interesting. I'm a firm believer that healthy food can be delicious, and I always aim to try to do that. So spices and herbs are just an easy way to do that.
Doctor, this is such great information. We're going to take one moment and actually hear from one of our sponsors in the mental health world. We'll be right back to talk about more food and
Great.
why it can calm your brain.
Struggling with gambling? Wheeler Health's Better Choice program offers personalized support and treatment to help you regain control. Visit WheelerHealth.org to learn more and take the first step towards recovery today.
We're back with Dr. Uma Naidoo. She is the author of a brand new book, and it's Calm Your Mind with Food. In fact, I just want to put this on the screen for a moment because anyone can have this book. It's a revolutionary guide to controlling your anxiety. And again, Dr. Naidoo is a nutritional psychiatrist. She's board certified. She is part of the Harvard group, and so she's a board certified Harvard nutritional psychiatrist. She's also a professional chef. So I just want to ask you on a personal level, is that why you married your two loves of medicine and food?
Kara, I wish I could say I had a grand plan early on in my career, but I really didn't. I was very fortunate that, hindsight is 2020. I went to culinary school because Julia Child is my food hero. And I thought, she did it as her second career, and why not me? But then I realized how well it melded with my studying of nutrition and also just mental health. And as the emerging science of the gut microbiome was coming forward, it seemed to make sense. And being able to interpret a recipe or a flavor or advise on a spice when you're having a conversation with someone, when you want them really to use food as one of the things to feel better, has become very helpful to me.
So you're a groundbreaker in your field. You're the founder and director of the first and only hospital-based nutritional and metabolic psychiatry service in the U.S. at Massachusetts General Hospital. There's so much online, and a lot of the doctors who come on my show who are more functional doctors are naturopaths who work with more forward-thinking MDs, but it's so truncated right now. You got to go here to learn about food. You got to go here to learn about this. This doctor says this is what you should be doing, and the regular doc is giving you this other thing. So let's say, example, even with ADHD, okay, we might be going, and as a psychiatrist, these stimulants have been used forever. I was hesitant. I'm always hesitant about any medication, but I've seen it make a huge difference in some of the young people in my family. And then in addition, we're seeing stuff all over line about how this could cause ADHD or this can exacerbate it. Is it more that we have to maybe do both? Do you see food as a primary solution or an additional solution? And is medication still important?
So first and foremost, medication in the appropriate situation is still important. There's certainly individuals who are so severely ill that they need a medication, and that has to be the first line. So I think we have to keep that in the conversation because every human is different. Someone may have mild ADHD and someone may have very serious ADHD and be unable to function, and they may need that stimulant to be able to help them get through their day, get through an exam, get through classes. So it's always on that spectrum. Not every human is the same, and we have to be careful about how we evaluate everyone. It depends very much on the level of illness that a person has. I've been able to work with individuals who are healthy and functioning but have severe anxiety. They're still able to go to work, but they can work on a nutritional psychiatry plan and not necessarily take a medication, do additional things, which I call tools in their toolkit, things like yoga, breath work, meditation, mindfulness, exercise, get into an exercise routine. And even spending time outdoors can be very powerful, in addition to tweaking their nutrition carefully over time. But other individuals, we do it in combination with whatever medication they're taking. And some of the good outcomes are getting onto a lower dose of that medication and thereby experiencing fewer side effects, but also starting to feel better as they help to improve their diets, because that is directly impacting how they feel as well. So sometimes it's a combination. And when it's someone who's not well at all, in other words, very severe, food can still be a part of the solution, but it may not be the first step that you take. But as someone is taking the medication and starting to feel better and really wants to, for example, not gain more weight, wants to, in fact, start to lose weight because of the metabolic side effects of some of these medications, it can be a very powerful tool. The idea is for it to always be part of the conversation in mental well-being.
Okay. And that's where it will become more holistic. It's not just eat this and you're fine, and not just take medication and you're fine. It's maybe a combination of the exercise, the food.
Yes.
Sometimes the medication can be super helpful. As you were saying, they might help give people a little bit of an ability to kind of exercise what you're telling them to do and maybe reduce the medications. So I think it's an important conversation, because some people there's so much anti-medication out there. And then there's also the reverse of just give me a pill and it's going to fix it. And as a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, is it safe to say there's no such thing as just take a pill and it's fixed when it comes to mental health?
There really isn't, Karen. In fact, there are lots of individuals whom I've seen suffer because their symptoms don't go away. And they
Mm,
go from medication to medication, from doctor to doctor, and they're still not feeling good.
mm,
So I am not against medication, but I really feel we need to broaden the conversation to include a combination of nutrition, lifestyle factors, paying attention to someone's metabolism. What are they eating? Are they gaining weight and developing side effects because of taking a psychiatric medication or even other medications that they may need could cause those side effects? It needs to be more of an integrated and holistic approach, understanding each individual is going to be different. Someone may need that medication, someone else may not, and still be able to work on these other factors. But I think, like you pointed out earlier, a lot of the expectation sometimes is I'm going to go in and get a pill and I'm going to be fixed. And unfortunately, that is, even the research shows us that is not the case. A lot of people on the medication still do not recover fully, or reach remission of those symptoms. They end up continuing to have those symptoms, and that's where having these other tools in your toolkit can be very powerful.
yeah. Well, a lot of us suffer from anxiety, and there's different, I certainly have had different times in my life where it's flaring more than others. And so the importance of knowing, like, how do we manage it? Because it's not always something that just goes away. If you have
Yeah,
anxiety that comes, especially
yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
all of that. So learning how to manage it. And that's what you learned in your own world here as a psychiatrist. How do I manage my anxiety? How do I change my diet? How do I have more breath work? What about some of the, I guess, the newer thoughts, not only about removing the chemicals, which all seems good, but there's a
Mhm.
lot of folks now in the holistic world that are saying, we just can't have gluten and we can't have dairy and we can't have, and some of these things are
Mm.
really bad for our gut. You've done a lot of research. Do you agree with that?
I really don't agree with an sort of all or none approach on eat this, not that approach, and I'll tell you why. For some people, dairy is a problem. There are a very large percentage of people who may be lactose intolerant. Other people have very strong feelings about dairy, but for others, it may be a source of nutrition. They do well, they thrive, and they're okay. I think things in moderation, the source of the dairy or the gluten, all important. Gluten is an entire subject on its own, but let's break it down for a second. It is the protein in wheat. The wheat in the United States is farmed in a way that it is there's almost very little value to the whole grain in wheat anymore. Is probably the best way to describe it. So gluten can be an issue for some individuals, and it can actually spike anxiety for some individuals. And
Mm,
that's where, when they're working with the practitioner, short-term elimination of gluten-containing foods, for example, because a lot of the gluten we consume is in ultra-processed foods, like things like sliced bread,
yeah.
sliced supermarket bread, the type you go on vacation, you forget that you left it on the kitchen cart, and you come back and it's perfectly fine. Well, that in itself should tell you something. What caused it to be able to last that amount of time. So gluten, someone may have a sensitivity, they may have celiac
Yeah.
disease, they may have something called non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and a
Yeah.
doctor can help break that down with them.
My
Or a
bad that I
functional
asked you a
nutritionist.
whole conversation. I hate to interrupt you, but I know we're out of time, and I don't want to cut you off. And there's
Oh,
so much more, but I want to let people know you can read a lot more. You have a diet plan. You have the book. The book is called "Calm Your Mind with Food," and I want to let show real quick where we can find Dr. Naidoo, and she's on Instagram, Dr. Uma Naidoo. She's on Facebook. Check out her website as well. She even has some mood elixirs that she's developed from clean sources that you can add in as well. Doctor, thank you so much for being with us on Kara's Cures. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
thanks, Kara. Take care.
And for everyone at home, have a great day and be well.
CURES is sponsored by Wheeler Health's Better Choice program. More at wheelerhealth.org.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you. That'll be good prep